tawa mai he rangi, tu tawa mai e raro, tu tawa mai e roto, tu tawa mai e waho. Kia tau ai te mauri tu, te mauri ora ki te katoa, haumie, huie, tae ki e.
Thank you. And again, just a reminder that we are being recorded and live streamed for this meeting. So welcome back everybody for our second day of hearings for the Revenue and Finance Policy proposal. Now we are just going to have a slight change in order of our submitters. Our first submitter has not arrived yet, so I've just checked in with Lance Simon and he's happy to come up and take the first slot. Now, just to quickly explain, you've been allocated 5 minutes to present and a bell will ring, and then there's a further 5 minutes for questions. But we are pretty relaxed if you go over that initial 5 minutes for your presentation. We're not being too stringent with that. So welcome, Lance, and we'll just invite you up to the front of the room here. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to come along. My submission is... Oh.
Pretty close.
My submission is sort of in two parts, but I just wonder if I may be permitted to ask a question first. The portion of the rates that affects the rural ratepayers, I sort of understand it's to cover street lighting and footpaths, but does that actually cover anything else?
So the main part of the rates that we're suggesting is changed as part of this proposal is the general rate.
Yeah.
And so that general rate applies across all the differentials, whether it be the 6 existing or the 3 new ones we're proposing around rural, commercial and residential. General rates cover those common community assets that everybody has access to, so parks and reserves, roading, library, cemeteries, public toilets, etc. So does that answer your question?
Well, there seems to be a lot of talk about street lights and footpaths.
And we have had a lot of submitters commenting that in their semi-rural properties they don't have streetlights and footpaths, so and that is one of the areas that there is concerns that have been raised, yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That sort of answers it. Well, I live on that portion of the road from King George Hall to the Taupo Napier Waira turn-off, so I don't have any street lights or footpaths. I receive a weekly rubbish and recycling service, which I'm grateful for. I don't really use sports fields, I don't go to the parks much, but I don't mind paying for those things. And the library, I haven't joined the library, but I don't mind paying for those things. But street lights and footpaths, what people in town get the benefit of, we don't get any benefit of. Also, just to base these things on property values, I don't think you're comparing apples with apples, because living in the country, you got to supply your own water supply, your own sewage system. I've been reliably told it's $55,000 now to put in a sewage system. People in town don't pay that. So there seems to be a bit of assumption by the council that if you live in the country, you must be rich and you can afford to pay more rates. Well, that certainly isn't the case in my case. So therefore, charging for services that rural people don't get, I think, is pretty unfair and unjust. There's an argument that, well, okay, you can go into town, you can walk down the footpaths, you can benefit from the street lights, but then so can somebody from Taupo, and they pay no rates to Napier at all. I went to 2 public meetings over these proposed increases. The one at Bayview on the 20th of October, 108 people attended, and a vote was taken. Did anyone agree with the proposal? There wasn't a single person agreed with it, and all the rest opposed it. So that's 108 people opposed it. Okay, a lot of people aren't very good at putting in submissions. They're quite prepared to go to a public meeting and have their say, but a number of people seem to shy away from putting anything in writing. But I think it was pretty clear to the council at probably all of the meetings, both the ones I went to, that a lot of the people that were there were rural ratepayers, and they were very opposed to it because they thought it was unfair. I understand that you then sent, I never received one, a letter to ratepayers asking them did they agree with the conditions. Well, a lot of the people were going to get a slight reduction, so naturally they would agree with that because they had no idea what they were, the implications to rural ratepayers. Bayview to me is the neglected suburb of Napier. It has an air of neglect. There's very little money spent on roadside plantings. There's no gardens. There's a sports park. But the whole thing, to me, it looks very neglected. I know it isn't the council's responsibility to do roadside clearing or whatever you like to call it. It's the NZTA. But when people come to Napier and they come in from the north, there's just a massive blackberry and fennel all along the side of the road. It looks disgusting. I don't get why the council isn't trying to put some pressure on the NZTA to clear that up, because I don't see it in other cities. And I've visited most of them in the North Island, and to me, I don't know. The people of Bayview have always paid more than their fair share. They've had to pay for their water, they've had to pay for their sewerage. There's no roadside gardens, there's no roadside trees. I don't think we get the service that the people in town get. There's a 300mm culvert goes under the road under the state highway by my place, and it drains a huge area, and it just when we have heavy rain it just floods. I've got photos here if anyone wants to see them. Now the council has come out and looked at this drain, and the NZTA, they both agree that it's woefully too small. The council put a camera down the drain to check it. They found a whole lot of short pieces of culvert which are allowing the road surface to drop through in heavy rain. There's already had a major hole with the water spout years ago. The council were going to get back to me with a report on the camera thing. That never happened, and the drain and the culvert remains. So I don't think we get very good service from the council out our way. What else do we have? Today we sort of live in a society where user pays. And I don't mind paying for libraries or parks or things like that, public toilets, that's fine, but I don't think I should pay any more than what I'm paying now, because I don't receive a lot of the services. With regards to the proposed pan tax, that a pan tax has no relevance whatsoever to the amount of sewerage that leaves any particular property, because you could have a house with one toilet and 8 people living in it, and you can have another house with 2 toilets and there's only 1 person or 2 people living in it. So why should they pay any more tax, a pan tax? It doesn't make a lot of sense. So I would ask the council to reconsider their proposal in regards to rural people. It isn't cheap living in the country. There is extra costs. The state highway in front of from Napier Taupo, Napier Warra turn off into the airport is in a disgusting state. People in town wouldn't put up with it, but we've got to. We asked the NZTA to lower the speed limit. They agreed. Then they said, oh no, they never said that. And this is the sort of thing that living in the country you've got to put up with. So anyway, thanks for the opportunity. That's my submission.
Thank you, Lance. I'll ask you just to wait for a moment in case there's any questions from councillors.
Okay.
And I did just want to comment on the PAN tax. So the PAN tax that we're considering for future implementation, it's not actually part of the current, but it is also only applicable to commercial operations. So residential properties would only continue to be charged for one unit, and we'd be looking at putting a different methodology in place for the likes of accommodation providers, etc., who currently are only getting charged one unit, and of course they have far more than that within their commercial operations. So just to provide you with a little bit more information on that in particular.
Okay.
Great.
But even so, I mean, some commercial properties could have the same thing could apply to commercial properties. There could be 2 toilets in a place that employed 50 people, or there could be 6 toilets. It really should be a people thing. Mm-hmm. But I don't know how you work that out.
I just will open up and see if any councillors have any questions of Lance today. No? Oh, yes. Councillor Tapani?
Greetings, Lance. This question is more seeking your opinion on a couple of things. So we've heard consistently, particularly from our semi-rural and our rural ratepayers, around their impressions of the impacts of these changes. And they've talked quite heavily around what services are in the CBD and what seems to be not present in the likes of Bayview. So I'm wondering whether or not, if I gave you a few seconds to flip that over, as I was listening to your submission this morning, it occurred to me there are a number of things in Bayview that are also not in the city that perhaps might add value to the greater city landscape. So in your current location, do you see quite a number of pedestrians, cyclists and people coming in and out along the coast and around Bayview that are Napier residents in your overall impression?
Well, there's a lot of people on bikes now, but I don't know where they come from.
And you'd say that's a pretty consistent presence every day?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Thank you. Yep. No, that's great. I'm just conscious of the fact that if I wanted to go for a ride on my bike to look at some trees and some open paddocks, I wouldn't be doing that down Latham Street. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Any further questions of Lance? Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Hi, Lance.
Hi.
Thank you very much for your submission. Just a quick question. How often would you travel into Napier as an indication?
Once every 2 weeks.
Shopping and the like?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming in and taking the
Okay.
time to submit
I
to
don't know
us
if
today.
anyone wants to see these photos, but they're pretty major.
Are you intending to hang around, or we could pass
Okay,
them
yep.
because we'll be finishing up about 9:40, and
Yep.
then if councillors wanted to have a look at them, we could
Okay.
come in. Yeah. Or if you were happy to leave them with staff, you could leave them with us, whatever is easier for you. Lovely, thank you. Now, our next submitter, I'll just check in if Leendert Vandenbert is with us. No? Okay, so Dermot, we will call you up the front, please.
Good morning, Mayor.
Welcome.
And councillors. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to come and speak. Some of you will be aware that I spoke already at 2 of your early information sessions on this process. I live in Rotofanawa Road, which is on one of the boundaries of Napier City Council. Across the road is Hastings District Council. I live on a 1.5 hectare property, which would be described as a small lifestyle property. I have done some analysis of our property and compared it with a Hastings property of the same size and value across the road. Currently, in this current year, we are paying $300 a year more than my neighbour across the road in a similar size property, similar land valuation. I accept that of that 300 difference, 200 is down to me paying for rubbish collection and recycling. I'm still paying $100 more than my neighbour across the road. Recently I discovered when there were some potholes in Road of Finover Road, I phoned Napier Council and asked them to repair the road. They said that's not our road, that is a Hastings road. So my neighbour across the road is paying $100 less in rates. He's also paying to maintain the road, which I don't pay for, and he's getting a bargain compared to me. Now you sent out a memo to all of us in the rural hinterland saying you were going to change the rates, and you initiated this exercise with us all, with the public meetings. You're going to increase my rates by $400 more. So that results in more cost to me with no improvement in benefits in any way. I should have said in my introduction that I watched all 3 sessions yesterday because I didn't want to come here and repeat anything that was said yesterday unnecessarily. But I do want to come to you with facts. I've given you some facts with regard to the financial situation I'm facing with the differences you're proposing to make. Lots of people have talked about water, sewage and stormwater, and the fact that we pay for our own water services, our sewage services, and we sort out stormwater ourselves. I did an analysis of my costs over the last 5 years. I've taken the costs for everything from installation of new components, maintenance, electricity costs, insurance costs, because I pay insurance to make sure that if any of the major items fail, that I don't get hit with a huge cost. I have also included the cost of filters and ongoing servicing to make sure that the systems work. My analysis, I've averaged out over the 5 years. The cost to me per year are $1,650. That's for water and sewage alone. We in the rural hinterland have to deal with lots of pests, whether they be plants or creatures. The council doesn't provide us any help in dealing with those. I haven't got an analysis of those costs. That's another example of the costs that apply to us, which people in the urban areas get supplied by council. I must say, I agree with a lot of your submitters in that I'm happy to pay for libraries, pay for the parks and pay for the pools, and those should be included in the, sorry, I need to get the correct term, in the uniform annual general charge. I have no problem with those being included there. There was a question late yesterday from the Deputy Mayor about someone whether they would be comfortable with actually paying fully for libraries or pools. And I thought that was a strange question, because I thought we were all paying fully for that anyway. And if there is confusion in that, even among councillors, then I think there's a problem here, in that I would assume that all of us ratepayers are paying for the basic core things in the council, and we're not being discounted in any way for that. So that needs to be clarified, and it should be clarified. And possibly someone will answer a question at the end of this, or ask a question at the end of this, and clarify that situation. I know my time's up, but I have a few more points I would like to make. Is that okay? I continue?
It's gold, yeah.
I'm going to cut out some bits. So I have some points to make with regard to the impacted 2,400 property owners who are outside the urban boundary of Napier. We don't make excessive demands on the council with regard to services. I believe we are a rich source of small business, which Napier should be encouraging. I think, especially now, you should not be alienating the rural ratepayers in the Napier Council area. And the other thing I would like to say is COVID is probably here to stay. My expectation is that COVID will be here for at least 10 years, and you should be preparing for the impact of that. That includes not having cruise ships here. If cruise ships don't come to Napier, within 18 months, Napier will become like Gisborne. You will lose a lot of the retail outlets in the centre of Napier. At that point, you need to look to see what your future is going to be in Napier. You have a rich source of people out in that rural hinterland, and we could, with goodwill, be working to help you establish small businesses and employment in Napier. If you alienate us, it will be very difficult for you to get back goodwill in the future for us to help Napier as a whole. The other thing is, yesterday, most people made submissions, and a lot of them only had one question at the end of that. A lot of them didn't have any questions. I was very disappointed watching yesterday. You councillors, you own this situation, and it's not just you councillors who are responsible for the rural ratepayers, it's you as a council as a whole. Napier exists not because of Art Deco. Napier exists because of the port. The port came into being to service the rural hinterland of Hawke's Bay, and the port will be here to continue to service that rural hinterland. It won't have cruise ships in it. You've got to work out what's going to be the future of Napier without Art Deco. At the most, Art Deco in the future will be 5 days out of your 365-day year. There's 360 other days where you have got to work out what to do with the future of Napier. Tourism is not going to come back. I know, I've studied Airbnb for the last 6 weeks. There was demand in Napier between Christmas and the middle of January. It dropped off. The demand in Airbnb now is the same as it is in May. You are not going to get the tourists in Napier that you've had every other year. You've got to look to the future, and you've got to, every one of you have got to be creative and to be working at new things. And we rural ratepayers can help you do that, but not if you alienate us. That's my point. I would like lots of questions now.
Thank you very much, Dermot. Now, first of all, I will pass across to Deputy Mayor Brosnan so she can clarify for you your line of questioning yesterday.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Dermot, for your submission. I had read it, and I suppose in terms of questions, I would make the comment that our role is really to listen in these hearings, and we have read everything the submitters have had to say as well. So I would like to assure you from me personally that a lack of a particular question on a submitter does not mean a lack of interest or a lack of listening. Your point, and I would like to clarify around my question yesterday. So I asked if they would be happy to pay 100% of what, say, a similar value property in town does for the likes of pools, libraries, parks, etc. And my reason for asking that question is that the only charge we are proposing to change is the UAGC, the annual general charge, and that covers pools, libraries, parks, reserves, museums, governance, cemeteries, public toilets, roading, footpaths and street lighting. So as you can see, a large proportion of the charge we are proposing to change are those kind of community good assets, and the specific ones that people consider to their properties are more like the roading, the footpaths, the street lighting, which obviously in the rural hinterland, as you say, you don't have quite the same level of service as in town. But the people in the rural hinterland, like Rotowhenua Road, are paying 63% of whatever the same value property in town does for museums, pools, libraries, etc., including roading. And I suppose what we've got to balance is, and what our proposal was to increase everyone to 100%, so the same value property in town versus rurally would pay the same for all of those services. Now, my question, I suppose, yesterday was premised off some lines of thinking I have that I'm looking for submitters to possibly change my perception on, and that is that roading is, I suppose, a key component of that annual general charge, and that the roading service is different in town to what it is rurally. However, the cost in providing rural roads per property is quite a lot higher. For instance, the road, Puketiteri Road out to Rotowhenua, I know they're costing that in, upwards of $10 million because of all the, it's undulating land and it's different to provide. Yeah. Or more costly to provide. And so my question was, if people were happy to pay 100% of the community good components, would they, and that's something we have to decide in our deliberations, be happy to also pay 100% of general roading costs across the city? For instance, we wouldn't target rate everyone in Rotowhenua Road when we upgrade that road. That will be covered by everyone under the annual general charge. So just to clarify what my question was and my thinking, so you do currently pay 63% of the UAGC and the differential currently, and that's the only change we were proposing. Interested in your thoughts, genuinely.
I think you should include that in the rate which we pay 100% on. Those things, like libraries and so on, should be included in 100%.
That's what our proposal is that you're submitting on.
I think my submission said something like that you should increase the general uniform charge. It's currently 400. It should be increased to more, and then you should have users' pays on everything else. You mentioned Puketiteri Road, and I welcome any discussion on Puketiteri Road. I have been campaigning for years for the speed limit to be dropped to 60 kilometres per hour, which is the rated safe speed by the Transport Agency. The council knows that that's the safe speed for the road, and if anybody dies on that road, it's on you people, every one of you sitting looking at me now.
Yeah. Thank you, Dermot. I will just to move on because we're here to discuss the revenue
I will say,
policy.
Paying on roads, all us ratepayers out there, we don't maintain Rotowhenua Road. We've paid rates for years on roads, and yet Puketiteri Road has not been improved. We paid 30 years of rates, and that must be a huge amount of money now. And that road hasn't been improved in that time.
Councillor Simpson has a question for you as well, I believe, followed by Councillor Taylor.
It's actually a point of correction.
Right.
I just want to correct what Councillor the Deputy Mayor has just said around rates and the uniform general annual charge.
I should have said general rate. not
Correct,
UAG.
yes. So what we're looking at changing is the general rate,
General rate.
which is the rate struck across all properties based on land value. A small component of that at the moment, which can go up to a maximum of 30%, is the uniform general annual charge. So I just wanted to correct that statement, because what we're talking about is the land value impact across general rate, and our opportunity to alter the uniform general annual charge, which might make a difference, which would actually equalise what residents are paying.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. Councillor Taylor?
Dermot, just a point. I know that Rotowhenua Road is quite a unique road, with half of it being Napier City and the other half Hastings District. You mentioned that you receive rubbish collection.
I pay for that too.
Yep,
yes.
yep, that's in your rates. That's for you. Do the residents on the other side of the road have a rubbish collection?
They have. There's a number of independent companies who come out and collect rubbish on the other side of the road, and they charge a fee which is in excess of what Napier Council will be charging us.
So they pay for their rubbish to be collected. It's
Yes,
not
they
collected
do.
by
Some of
Hastings.
them do.
Yeah.
Some
It's
of
not
them must
collected by
dispose of it
Hastings.
in other ways. There was a time in the early days, I've been in Rotowhenua Road for 14 years. In the early days, people from all over the country left black bin bags at the end of Rotowhenua Road. And the Napier Council come out and they picked up all those bags at the end of Rotowhenua Road. It was people from the other side of the road who were leaving those bags. It was people way out in the country, out beyond. And the Hastings District Council here, they stopped their cars on their way into work in the morning and left several black bin bags there. I had to complain about the fact that there were obviously rodents and so on collecting there. The bags weren't always closed, and there's one day one of those bags exploded because of the heat of what was in the bag. So that doesn't happen. That process doesn't happen. It's a cleaner environment now, and they must dispose of their rubbish in their own way. But they're sorting that out. It's not Hastings Council that's sorting it for them. It's private.
Thank you very much, Dermot. If there's no further questions from councillors, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
We'll check if Leendert Vanderbert has arrived. No, so that means that our next submitter is James Brownlee. Welcome. So James, just to let you know, there will be a bell at 5 minutes and then open for questions. If you do go a little over that 5-minute time allocation, though, it's no...
I don't think I'll be too long, Kirsten.
Okay, thank you.
James Brownlee.
Huh. Oh, no, thanks for the opportunity to speak. I know it's an important issue for everyone, this, like the fact that people, their rates are going to probably rise in the rural areas over, from the historic things that have happened in the past. But what I did the other day was just went for a bit of a drive around Bayview and had a bit of a look at the footpaths and the gutters and the street lighting and drains and stuff. And I don't know whether the drains are in the general rate. I think with the public meeting, I sort of thought that they were. And from there I went into West Shore and I had a look at West Shore, and it's a difference of chalk and cheese. And that's probably because we've been paying a lot less rates within Bayview, historically coming from the county council. But going forward, if we're going to pay more rates, 25% more rates, we should be getting that money coming back into Bayview, basically to fix up some of these things. And I know you have done some of them, like within Bayview has been footpathed, and it's probably they probably should be paying their fair share of rates because that's all been done there. And then also Rogers Road's been done, but there's a footpath on one side and not on the other. So they should be paying more for that service, really. And yeah. So where I'm really going is that if we're going to pay more, we probably don't mind paying more if we're going to get more back from it. And probably the other thing moving on from that is a lot of people probably can't afford it. There's a whole lot of elderly people, and then there's businesses. And I've got a business, an orcharding business, and really the costs are going up. Compliance, labour's gone up this year, and really, it's just what's happening. And if we don't innovate in our business, we won't continue. So, but basically, we just can't afford to keep up the pace of the costs that we have at this particular point. Otherwise, everything's going to shrink. So, I had a look at the Hastings rating thing and the general rate, and it looks like they pay 0.68% of the general rate, and 60. Well, that basically is 68% of the general rate, and which I think we're paying. I think you said 63, but I thought it was 64. I don't know. The numbers, whatever they are, and we're going to go up to 85% of the general rate. Is that right? In the rural?
For a rural property, yes.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is I think that's probably too big a hike. We should stay in line with the Hastings district. And that was comparing a sort of a similar property to ours in Bayview as to a Hastings one as well. So I don't know if the council or you've looked at the Hastings situation and how they rate their thing, because really at the end of the day, at some stage down the future, we're all going to come together. So you probably should keep it really in line with the Hastings district, and in a sense, in a rural thing, I think you should have a look at them really, because they've had probably a lot more experience, which is understanding because they have far bigger rural area. And really, all I can do is just will you guys to look at it from that perspective, and just don't make it too hard on everybody in the rural area. Right, thank you.
Thank you, James. Also, just my understanding is Hastings District Council actually has 5 different differentials for their rural properties, which have different percentages. So perhaps the ones out near you are the 0.68, and I couldn't comment on what they might be across those other differentials. So, but certainly useful information to have.
I spoke to the Deputy Mayor of Hastings to get that information. She's pushed it through to me.
Okay.
Yeah, but probably one of the other things that they do is they only pay 0.75 of all the other. What do you call it? The hang on, I've got it down here. The specific charges like water or sewage or
the
rubbish.
targeted rates.
The targeted rate, sorry. Yeah. So they only pay 0.75 of that, whereas we pay 1, you know what I mean? So they get a bit of a discount there, but that's their business, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's
Although
different.
many rural properties in Napier wouldn't be paying anything,
Yeah.
zero in terms of those targeted rates, if they're not connected or close enough to be connected. So, yeah. I'll open up for questions from councillors. Councillor McGrath.
Good morning. Hey, we've had a few comparisons with Hastings in the last couple of days. Do you think, in living on, we can say, Rotowhenua Road, so you've got Hastings on one side, Napier on the other, do you think it's easier to access Napier services than those people can access the Hastings services?
Sorry, Richard, that's a question for me.
Well, I'm going to put it this. I'm just using your street as an example of one side of the road being Hastings and Napier. Now, I'll direct it this way.
We could have
And-
that conversation offline, but we can't have interjections from the floor during a formal process, sorry.
So, ask the question again for me, please.
Oh, don't make me do that.
I'm buying time here. I'm buying time.
You made comparisons between Hastings and Napier,
Yep.
and I'm just wondering out your way whether you receive better service and faster service from perhaps Napier than the Hastings people do from the Hastings Council out that way. For example, if you had to go into council and get some information, opposed to your neighbour across the road who's in Hastings, they'd have to go twice as far. If you rang animal control, for example, because you had an issue out there, ours is 15 minutes away, Hastings might be 40 minutes away. So,
So,
different costs, different service levels, perhaps?
yeah, everyone has different ideas of what service is.
Yep. And access.
I think, yeah, I mean, that's not that pertinent at this stage. Like, yeah, I mean, I understand where the other gentleman was coming from, because there are other roads out our way that have the same thing. And, you know what I mean, really, someone's got to get on and sort some of the things out at some stage. You don't want to get into a whole lot of semantics, really.
No, I agree. If there's issues that we should be sorting out in the Napier ones,
Yeah.
absolutely. Thanks for
Yeah.
bringing it to our attention.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah. All right.
Are there any further questions for James? Thank you very much for taking the time and coming to submit to us today, James. I will do one final check to see if no. So that actually brings us to the conclusion of today's submitters. So we will be adjourning until tomorrow. Just to remind everybody that 10 o'clock tomorrow we are back here for the Sustainable Napier and Future Napier Committee meetings initially, and the hearing will recommence in the afternoon. So if we could all stand just to do our closing karakia. Ki tau te rangimārie, ki runga i ngā iwi katoa o Ahuriri, ki hiki te ora, ki taha me te mānamatanga, i ngā wā katoa, ti hei mauri ora. Thank you, everyone.